Hello everyone and welcome to the lecture on classes in Python. So far we have learned about different data types like strings, lists, dictionaries, tuples, and functions and so on. We have seen that things in Python, all this, for instance, strings, lists, and tuples, they are all objects. Everything that we deal with in Python is an object. And we have seen that we can find out what kind of object something is by using the type function. Right? And classes are a way of grouping together related functions which act upon some data. That's the main use of classes. And when we say things in Python are objects, it means that there are some instances of a class. For instance, let's say we have a string name and then save it in a variable called string1. And let's say string example. And then if we call string1, we get string example, str example. And if we want to find out what kind of object this string1 is, we can simply say type and then pass string1. It tells us it's a string object. Similarly, we can say type of, let's say, some number 23. We see that it's an integer. And if we have a list and save it, let's say, in a variable called lst, and let's say our list has the following elements: A, C. Then if we want to find out the type of our list object, we see that it's a list. So that's how we can find out the type of any object. We simply type and then pass any object there. Great. And some data values which we store inside an object, we call them attributes. And functions which are associated with those objects are called methods. We have seen some built-in methods that we have in strings and lists, for example. Next, let's see how we can create a class. So to create a class, we start with the keyword or statement called class. So we type class and then space and then name of the class. So the class name goes next. And then we have colon. And then we go to a new line, indent, and we put our methods. The first method that we put is a special method known as the init method. I'll explain more about it. So underscore underscore init underscore underscore, and then in parentheses we pass self. This is an attribute, and then colon, new line, and then any code to initialize our object goes here. Any code to initialize our object goes here. And then any additional method goes here. Method name and so on. So this is the general structure for creating a class. We have the class statement or keyword, then space, class name. So the class name starts with an uppercase, and usually we give a nice descriptive name for our class name. For instance, if our class consists of let's say doing multiplication, addition, subtraction, and so on, we would give it a class that clarifies that. For instance, we could name that class operation or math operations or something like that. And then the first method is the special method known as the init method, and then it takes self as its first argument, and then any other method follows that. Method means any function within a class. So method is nothing but a function which is defined within a class. Okay? It's just a function within a class. And we see that we use classes as templates for creating various objects. And then once we create a class, we initialize our object. So any object created by using the same class will have similar characteristics. We'll see that later on. So this init method is a special method. When we call our class object, a new instance of the class is created. And then the init method on this object is executed with all the parameters that we pass to the class object. And the purpose of this init method is to set up a new object using data that we have provided to it. This init method is also called the class constructor, or the method used for initializing methods. And Python calls this init method when we create a new instance of this class. And it takes self as its first parameter. And then it also takes any other parameter. So let's say parameter 2, parameter 3, and so on. But it takes self as its first parameter. So self is a parameter or reference to this instance of our class. And every method's first argument is self. So here we have another method, and the first argument it takes is self. So self is not only the first parameter in our init method, but also any other method that we have in our class. It takes self as its first argument or parameter.